Hi y'all, welcome back to my channel. I hope you're having a good day, and if not, I'm sending you spoons. So today's video is going to be a little different. If you haven't seen my most recent community post, I am moving right now, so there's just a lot going on for me right now. I'm multitasking a bunch of stuff, but I've just so happened to find a bit of free time where I need to fill in my day. So hey, we're gonna do a silly little fun video on this channel. I mean, all the videos are fun, but this specific one is unscripted. So apologies if my wording is just god-awful or if I start swearing. Are we past the minute mark yet? I have the mouth of a sailor. So apologies for that, but as I said, today is just going to be a fun, silly little video, and I decided what is something really low effort that I can do just to fill time or get a video out because yay, we're busy. So I'm going to be doing a Transformers tier list today, which is honestly really on brand for me. So as y'all can see on the screen here, I've got, I think, probably all the main continuities. Probably not all of the Transformers continuities that exist because Transformers is a giant franchise and I can't get to every single freaking one, but I have listed basically every main continuity or every continuity that I have just picked up throughout my time in the fan base. So without holding y'all here for too long, let's get started. I don't know if it picked up my finger guns. Now, with this tier list, I did kind of try and order this chronologically in the times that these continuities were released. Probably not entirely accurate because I don't have a great timeline in my head of which continuities came first and or last, but I did do my best. So first up, we have got Transformers Generation 1. I have also included, I think it's Headmasters and Victory, even though I'm not super versed in those two continuities, but I've included them here as Victory and Headmasters have kind of been getting a little more spotlight as of lately, mainly because of the Headmasters dub. If you don't know about that dub, oh my god, please look. I think it's actually on YouTube. I believe the episodes are actually on YouTube, and you can find like dubbed episodes. They are hilarious. You need to go have a watch. It is a horrid dub, but it's so funny. So, starting with the G1 franchises, G1 is actually, the original G1 cartoon is actually just real silly goofy. Like, it's one of those really typical, like, 80s made for young boys cartoons. It's just silly, goofy, endearing. I do definitely think that there actually are quite a few plot points that, of course, have just stayed around in fandom. Like, Fire in the Sky, that episode is a classic. And of course, for my Sky Star loving heart. It's a very good episode. There's nothing super in-depth as far as like plots or character moments, da-da-da. They're just literally silly little guys having silly little adventures. And they're fun, and they're silly, and they're goofy. There's some slapstick in there. It's a fun time. I do enjoy my old-ass fucking cartoons. So I think for me, G1's... Ooh... See, now this is going to be my problem. I'm not going to know where to rank these. Some of these I already know which ones are going in like S and A tiers, like for sure, but it's series like G1 that kind of fall in the middle for me, where it's like you have some really good bits and pieces to you, but the pieces that aren't great or like capture my attention, I'm going to be like, it's mid, which I feel like that's kind of just the formula for lack of a better word. That's just the formula that tends to happen with Transformers. We tend to get a lot more like very mid-series. Like, they're not awful, but they're not like the best thing you've ever seen. And you know, of course, that's how it's gonna be. It's Transformers at the end of the day. That being said, we have gotten some really wonderful media, and absolutely no hate to anyone who fucking adores G1. I get it. I fucking get it. I have my fair share of love for the OG, the original. But I think G1 and its counterparts, Headmaster and Victory, can go and be. Like, they're solid B's, at least, I feel, just because they're the things that started it all off. They're the building block. You gotta kind of have them in the middle, at least. Okay, so next one on here might be a little more underground to some people, but for me, this is actually something that spurred my interest in Transformers when I started getting into the fan base and everything, is the original Transformers Marvel comics. So I actually have, I think, a few collections of the original Marvel comics, just packed away right now since I'm moving, but I started reading those because it's actually really funny. I started reading the Marvel comics because I had heard that people said that the Transformers comics were really freaking good. So I was like, oh, well, I better start with like the very first ones. And in my brain, that means, you know, in a chronological timeline is the Marvel comics, because I believe the Marvel comics were like our first Transformers comics we ever had. I'm not sure if Transformers started off as a comic before like the original G1 cartoon, but the Marvel comics were definitely one of the first Transformers continuities. And then I think it was the Marvel UK comics that also were a big starting point for Transformers as well. Even though I haven't read any of the UK comics. I believe that's where we got Megatron's Gladiator backstory from, is the UK comics, which is really cool. I love learning about like the origins of where all this like stuff has come from. Which is why I wanted to start with the Marvel comics, but I very quickly learned after I got these comics that, oh, these aren't that great. These aren't that great. Like, they're not horrible. It's definitely, they're older comics. These are older comics from like, 80s? I would assume the 80s. They are definitely an 80s style comic, and they're old school Marvel. They're nothing like horrid. They're nothing awful. I especially really loved the issue where Spider-Man kind of makes an appearance. That was really cool. I believe that's when Spider-Man has his Venom suit and everything. So it's just really cool to kind of see the snark of Spider-Man with these other characters who are kind of almost equally snarky back to him. It's really fun, and I actually have very fond memories of reading those comics. The one specific memory I have of the Marvel comics actually is Ratchet calling a tree a brown pipe. And that is where I instantly fell for Ratchet. As a character, I adore Ratchet now as a more versed Transformers fans. But I think for me, the Marvel comics will... C or B. I'm trying to decide between C or B because, again, it's just very little bits and pieces that are more in like nostalgia goggles for me rather than like it's an actual good comic. I think we're gonna put it in B. I think, you know what, it deserves to go in B. This is my tier list. This is my tier list. Joking, but like, this is my tier list. I'm allowed to just be a bit nostalgic about some of this stuff that I grew up with. So we're gonna have Marvel Comics in B. Ooh, okay. Next up is the Beast Wars cartoon. Oh man. I hate to say this, but I was absolutely the type of fan who put off watching Beast Wars for so long purely because, one, I was a 2D animation supremacist. I purely believed that 2D animated shows were the best ones because they are in 2D and they're hand-drawn. That sort of bullshit, you know? And especially with the animation style that Beast Wars is in, you know, that very early 3D animation of the 90s and everything. And it looks, I'll say that much, it looks. However, I will say, now that I have watched Beast Wars, the animation does grow on you. The animation does grow on you, and you just kind of get used to it, I think, after so often. But honestly, probably even for the time, it really wasn't horrid. There were honestly probably 3D shows that came out when I was a kid, like Code Lyoko was that one, that had kind of on par animation styles with Beast Wars, even in the 2000s. So I feel it's really unfair now that I have watched Beast Wars and realized what a fucking good show it is. Holy shit. Now that I've kind of gotten past that supremacist mindset, it's like, holy shit, this was actually just so good. Like, Beast Wars has a wonderful script with wonderful characters, at least in season 1 and like, yeah, probably season 2 as well. I haven't gotten on to season 3 yet, but I think I just about finished season 2, and oh man, Beast Wars is just good, okay? It's actually really good, and I highly recommend that if you are someone who is putting off Beast Wars because of its animation style, please just watch it for the script and the comedy and the characters, because they are literally the thing that holds this show up in like Transformers history. And I absolutely see why there is such a cult following for this show, because it really is good. Like, the script and the characters really do just pull it all together, bring it all together. Dinobot is my boy, and I absolutely adore him in this freaking show. Like, after I watch Beast Wars, that man, that mech, the love of my life, the love of my heckin' life. So Beast Wars, I think, I kind of want to put it in A, but it might go in B just because, again, a show really has to capture my attention because I'm currently working on getting an ADHD diagnosis. So things really have to capture my attention for me to like want to keep watching and keep up with shows. Beast Wars is kind of in that middle ground where it's got some really freaking good stuff, but it's not quite enough to capture my attention, usually because it is more episodic like G1 is and has been. I think though we're gonna put it in A simply because it's got wonderful script. I haven't seen Beast Machines, but from what I've heard, it goes to a very different sort of plot and has very interesting character choices in it that a lot of original Beast Wars fans just are like, what? Including, I dare say the animation in Beast Machines looks worse than it does in Beast Wars simply because those models are terrifying. Oh my god, I think it's like the Black Arachnia model that I was really surprised at. She looks like in Beast Wars original style. It looks, once again. I do know Beast Machines goes really crazy. I think, just for the sake of I haven't watched it for myself yet, we're gonna put it in C. We're gonna put it in C and we'll leave it at that. Next up, we have Transformers Robots in Disguise 2001. I specifically have to say 2001 because if you didn't know, there are 2 versions of Transformers Robots in Disguise, and this is the first one. So I haven't seen any of these episodes from this series myself. However, I have seen a lot of Tumblr posts and a lot of clips and bits and bobs and pieces from Robots in Disguise just through things like Tumblr and TikTok or YouTube compilations of funny moments in Transformers, and Robots in Disguise very commonly is usually in these compilations simply because it is so freaking silly. It looks so silly, and as far as I know, I think this might have actually been the first Transformers like anime. Like Robots in Disguise was the first Transformers anime, and it's definitely interesting. It's probably, if I watched it and just from the clips I've seen, this definitely gives like silly, goofy anime vibes sort of thing. You just have that the style of anime comedy. It's just got that style. I don't know how else to describe it. But since I haven't seen Robots in Disguise, I think that's gonna go in C with Beast Machines. You might see a lot of these shows that I haven't quite seen enough of to judge fully. We'll just go straight into C or B tier, probably, just based off my predictions of how I will enjoy the show or whether I feel I should put it any higher. So that's just gonna go in C for now. So this is one of the shows that I actually grew up with as a kid, and it is Transformers the Unicron Trilogy, which is made up of Transformers Armada, Transformers Energon, and Transformers Cybertron. I didn't put each of those seasons separately on here, now I've realized, but so this will just kind of be the whole series as a whole. Now, I have watched a fair bit of Transformers Armada, and I did have a few episodes of, it was either Cybertron or Energon on DVD, which I actually still have that DVD. It's packed away right now, so I can't go and grab it. But I do have a DVD of either, it's like 3 episodes from Energon or Cybertron, and I remember I watched those episodes on repeat because I would say that the Unicron trilogy for me was the first time I saw, other than in something like TFA, which I also grew up with, the Unicron trilogy really showed me that the Transformers world and its characters could really have deep, in-depth stories and plot lines that were really, really freaking cool and interesting. And I feel especially because the Unicron trilogy was like an anime, which I was very into as like a kid and like a teenager, it really like sparked that interest for me because I absolutely adored anime as a kid, and all the like, I was one of those kids who grew up with Pokemon, Digimon, all that stuff, Bakugan, Yu-Gi-Oh! So when I saw the Unicron trilogy and the storylines that we're going into, I believe it's Cyclonus who has a really interesting character arc when Megatron comes back in those episodes that I had on DVD. He has this whole moment of wondering, did I make the wrong choice? Should I be with the Autobots? I really just want to go and serve the Decepticons again. I believe that was the arc anyway. I haven't seen those episodes in a long time, but that arc was really compelling to me as a kid, and I really, really felt for this character that I knew nothing else about. I only knew that, oh, he's yearning for the old days. And that really stuck with me as a kid and still does as an adult. Especially having, oh gosh, is it David Kaye? No, it's not David Kaye. I think, oh gosh, it's one of the big Optimus voice actors that is really well known. I think he might have done Primal as well in Beast Wars, who does Optimus in this series. Phenomenal, fucking phenomenal Optimus. And I think we also get David Kaye as Megatron in this series as well. And Armada Megatron, oh. I love him so much, not even to mention Starscream. I love Starscream in this series so much. Just, this series has some very good characters. I will say though, when it falls flat, it falls flat. However, because of my nostalgia goggles, I think this will be like a strong B. The Unicron trilogy will be a strong B for me simply because of nostalgia, and it's what introduced me to Transformers having like larger narratives with really cool, interesting characters. That was so cool for me. So yeah, that's the Unicron trilogy, a strong B, a pretty freaking strong B. Alright, so this is another Transformers continuity that I haven't actually consumed content for, very similar to 2001 Robots in Disguise, and this I think is the Dreamwave comics. And for those who don't know, the Dreamwave comics, I believe they got the Transformers comics before IDW in 2005. They didn't run for half as long as IDW, I think, although I will say IDW just ran for like a super long time for how long certain companies can like hold on to certain franchises and stuff, I guess, for lack of a better way to explain that. But the reason I've included it on this list is just because the snippets I have seen of the Dreamwave comics, which is usually through Tumblr, seem really interesting and really cool, just with like bits and pieces that have really interesting kind of character relationships. I think like Starscream and Shockwave have something going on in those comics, as well as Jetfire and Starscream. There's just some like interesting character moments in there that I think would be really cool to read up about, even though I'm not entirely sure what this specific comic continuity involves for the Transformers franchise. So I think this will just have to go in C for now, just because I'm unsure, but I'm really looking forward to picking up a few Dreamwave comics, or just to see what they're all about. I'm looking forward to it, including the Dreamwave comics are, oh my gosh, the Dreamwave comics have some really freaking good art in them. So I'm also looking forward to it just to see what the art is like and everything. I look forward to consuming more for this continuity, basically, but it'll be in C for now. Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. My nemesis Bayverse. Alright, so this one, as most people will probably know, is the 2007 Transformers film and all the others that follow it. Bayverse. Oh god. Now, I will say I do have quite the soft spot for Bayverse, just because this is another series that I grew up with, like TFA and the Unicron trilogy. Bayverse was how I was initially introduced to Transformers. This was the very beginning for me, was Bayverse. And despite now, as a much more seasoned fan of Transformers of this series, I can see that it's... oh god. Bayverse is not good, y'all. It's not fucking good. Holy shit. Especially after having consumed more Transformers content and then coming back to the Bayverse films. I was really disappointed to see how these films held up. I thought that they had done decently originally before I had consumed more, like Transformers Prime, more of the G1 cartoon, Beast Wars, the IDW comics, before I had looked more into a lot of those like much more highly regarded series. I thought Bayverse was fine. I thought it was like, oh yeah, it's just for the general audience, which it is. The Bay films very much are for a general audience. It's so general people can kind of know what's going on, get the gist. But the thing is that the Bay films don't even do that well. If these films didn't have Transformers slapped onto the title, no one would know. No one would freaking know that this is a Transformers film, that these were all Transformers films. You could take the Transformers out and it would just be a film about transforming robots. Anyways. Before I rant more about Bayverse, because I could make, in fact, I probably will in the future make a video on the Bayverse films, because, oh my god, they're absolutely terrible adaptations. Terrible, 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 and terrible storytelling, just all around awful. However, I do have a sweet spot, and I do sometimes enjoy going back and rewatching these films, despite that, oh my god, Michael Bay is a shithole of a person. but it's gonna be like a really low C. It's gonna be a really freaking low C. I don't like the Babe films much anymore, but I still can watch them with like groups of friends where we're just shitting on the fucking films, or if we are just putting our nostalgia goggles and just sitting and enjoying what used to be, because I still can watch these films for that because they're so freaking ridiculous. So it's a low C. It's a low C, and it will stay there. I hate the Bayverse. Oh, thank God, though. Right after Bayverse is The Refresher, one of the other series that I grew up with, aside from Bayverse and the Unicron trilogy, Transformers Animated. Oh! Oh boy, the things I have to say about Transformers Animated are far better than Bayverse. Now, firstly, I'm going to say something that's probably controversial to a lot of the other TFA fans I know, simply because TFA is very much one of those like cult classics in the fandom, I feel, and there's a lot of people who deeply love this series and or what this series could have been, because it did get canceled after 3 seasons, which is really sad because this really was a series with like so much potential. It just never really got that chance. However, I will say, Transformers Animated is a little bit overhyped. For me, Transformers Animated does lack in a lot of places, and there are bits and pieces where things are just, I'm bored. Meh. I don't care about this character or that character. This is a filler episode, obviously. However, the episodes that are good are freaking good. They are freaking good. The one episode in particular that I always remember is the episode where it's Ratchet centered, and we go into his backstory during his time in the war where Lockdown appears, and it's such a cool episode because there is so much good character development and storytelling going on that is just so interesting, as well as, gosh, I should have said spoilers. Spoilers for TFA, probably spoilers for like a majority of these series that I'm going to be talking about here. Another episode that's very similar to that is the one where it goes into Sentinel and Optimus's backstory with Alita in the episode where Black Arachnia appears, and we learn that, oh my god, Alita is Black Arachnia, Black Arachnia is Alita. She got infected by the spider venom of the things that were on the ship, and those were such cool episodes for me as a kid. And again, this was another series much like the Unicron trilogy that showed me that Transformers can have a lot of depth to it and really interesting and cool characters. I will say, in Transformers Animated's defense here, it has some really, really cool characters. Again, Ratchet, Alita, Optimus, Bulkhead. Oh my gosh, Bulkhead really surprised me in like the last 2 seasons. Bumblebee, Prowl, literally most of the main cast are just all so freaking cool. I just wish more had been done with this series. And again, might have been because it got canceled, and there was recently, within like the past year or so, I think, there was a script reading for the script of what would have been season 4 of Transformers Animated, and from things I've heard about it, it seems like it would have been a wild ride, but I would have loved that if we could have gotten another season of this show, because it really did end abruptly. Without spoiling the finale of TFA, I will simply say it was rushed. It was really, really rushed. Season 3 especially was quite rushed, but there were a lot of interesting plot points that were gone into, whether briefly or so, that were really, really interesting and really cool, and I wish we could have gotten more of. But yeah, TFA was a series with so much potential that it just didn't really get to have because it didn't have the time. It wasn't really in, I don't think it was really in that era when animated shows would have gotten longer runnings. So it's really sad that this series had to like have such a rough ending and such a quick ending. But I think that'll be like a very B or A? Now I gotta decide which tier. Oh god. My nostalgia goggles really want to say A, but I also know this is hard. I think E. I think it'll go in A. It's gonna go in A. I'm not gonna worry about it anymore. It's going in A. I have my nostalgia goggles on. This is my list. Alright, next continuity is another continuity I haven't actually played because this one is a video game. So this is Transformers Fall of Cybertron and its trilogy, because this was a trilogy series. Fall of Cybertron is a really, really highly regarded game in the fandom. It is regarded as the best video game in the fandom other than Transformers Devastation, which we'll get to later on this list. But I remember really being into Fall of Cybertron for, again, its story and its characters. It had really good dialogue and characters, as well as a very compelling story that I was really interested in. And I believe as a kid, we actually had I think we had the first game on Wii, and I remember really being interested in that, mainly because I think on one of the levels that was a level with Bumblebee, and it was really cool and really interesting, and I was very drawn into that whole story and plot line of you playing as Optimus, where you get to play as the main character, the big driving force, Optimus Prime, saving Cybertronians and stuff, and it's set on Cybertron, and it was really freaking cool to me. I actually do have Fall of Cybertron on DVD, however, I don't have an Xbox 360, so I will need to get an Xbox 360 in order to play the version I have. But I'm really looking forward to it, and I think honestly, this will go in B tier for now, simply because I haven't played the game, but I really feel like it will hold up. It will stand that test of my own interest. But I'm really excited to get to this game. It just, from everything I've heard about it, it seems like so much fun. The gameplay seems like it would be really cool. The plot and the characters seem really cool. I'm super excited to get to it. Oh, yes! So for those who don't know, this is Transformers Exodus, and this is actually a trilogy series. I believe it's Transformers Exodus, Transformers Exiles, and then Transformers Revelation or something like that is the third one. But I finished reading Exodus, earlier this year, late last year, I finished reading Exodus, and Exodus was a really, really good read. This is another one of those continuities that's really highly regarded in the fan base, and it really does live up to that hype. Exodus is actually a really well written book, and especially for me, I actually got recommended to read this because of the Megatron and Optimus content in this book. God, I can't consume any content in this fan base without immediately making it Megop. Without immediately being where is Megatron and Optimus? Where are they? So that's actually why I started reading Exodus, because I had heard that there is some very good Megap content in it. And oh boy, was there. And not even for the fact that it's just good interactions between these characters. It has very compelling dialogue and very compelling dialogue and character choices. I can't remember the word to describe it, but some very, very cool character choices and themes. That's it. Some very cool themes that you see pop up as well in the IDW comics, and maybe a little bit of TFP, because Transformers Exodus, if you also didn't know, is part of the Aligned continuity. Kind of. The Aligned continuity is a freaking mess, but Transformers Exodus is technically part of that continuity. But Exodus is just a really freaking well-written Transformers story. You really can read it as part of the Aligned continuity, or you can read it as its own continuity, whichever you freaking prefer. The biggest complaint I do have about this book, though, other than the many, many praises I can give it, is that, oh my god, this book is very wordy. This book has a lot of words, and when I say a lot of words, I mean it has a lot of big words. And when I say it has a lot of big words, I mean I will never get the phrase geosynchronous energon bridge out of my head for the rest of my living days. I was reading this book on live in order to get through it because I knew I wasn't going to be able to concentrate if I was reading it on my own. And that specific name miffed me up so much on stream. I was tripping my tongue so often because of geosynchronous energon bridge. And now I can pronounce it gorgeously because I've learned how to enunciate it because it popped up so many times in that book. Oh my god. That and plasma energy chamber and a handful of other things, but that is one of my biggest complaints for Transformers Exodus. It's really wordy, and if you do struggle with concentration, it's gonna be a difficult read to get through, but if you are there for the characters and the story, this is where this book really excels, and again, really shows you the depth that Transformers can go into with its themes and its plots, and show you how interesting these characters truly are and the inner workings, the inner machinations of their minds. But Exodus for me, oh boy, I think honestly that could go in S tier. I feel like that really could go in S tier for me, simply because there's so many good scenes and bits of dialogue, especially the council scene. If you've read it, that's a wonderful scene, absolutely wonderful scene. So I think that's gonna go in S tier quite confidently. Alright, Prime Wars Trilogy. This is another series I haven't really seen. I do want to watch it. I'm not sure where I can. I think it's on Machinima. I would think it's on Machinima because it's a Machinima production. But like I said, I actually haven't consumed any content for the Prime Wars Trilogy besides a very specific YouTube compilation. Which really goes to show my taste in Transformers. Is a 15-minute compilation of Prime Wars Megatron and him just being so sassy. The best character in Prime Wars, as far as I know. I know this is not a super well-loved series, just because I know there's a lot of people who were like, oh my god, the dubbing's awful, or the plot makes no sense. I've heard all of that, but I still really do want to see Prime Wars simply to watch it for the Megatron in that series, who his dialogue is some of the best Megatron dialogue I have ever heard from this character, and is honestly just really in character for like who Megatron is as a character. So I am actually looking forward to Prime Wars, even though people absolutely got opinions, quite negative opinions about it, but I'm still going to give it a go. I think that'll be like a strong C and or like a low B when I do get to it, but for now it'll go in the C tier simply because I haven't consumed really all that much content for it. So there we go, it's a high C. High C for now because Megatron cunty. Oh yeah! Oh, we get to my favorite, my all-time favorite Transformers continuity, other than the aligned continuity, is the Transformers Phase 1 IDW comics. Oh my god! These Transformers comics are the comics that, back when I was first getting into Transformers, that people said, you need to read these. And I will absolutely defend those recommendations, because as a Transformers fan who has now consumed like their fair share of the IDW comics, and especially the two most popular, probably the most popular series in the IDW run, More Than Meets the Eye and Lost Light, you need to read these comics if you are a Transformers fan. Oh my god. These comics, I don't even have to debate. These go straight in S tier. The IDW comics especially, and when I say IDW comics, I mainly talk about MTMTE and Lost Light, but the rest of the IDW comics even are quite strong. It really just depends on the comic run you get to. Like Last Stand of the Wreckers, Chaos Theory, definitely a good chunk of the Spotlight comics and everything. The Cup Spotlight is glorious, wonderful. All Hail Megatron arc. So many really, really good comics in this series that either are just total fan service that are just a really fun freaking read, or they have wonderful comedy like MTMTE, compelling characters and plots, absolutely stunning art. So many artists that are very well renowned in the fandom now, like Alex Milne, Jack Lawrence, Guido Guidi, Saren Stone. So many phenomenal people in the IDW comics who made just an absolutely amazing series, amazing run, amazing series. This is I would say the IDW comics are peak Transformers content, especially because it does really, very similar to Exodus, it's very strong with its themes that it goes into and the stories of a class uprising and everything that it really focuses on quite heavily, especially for Megatron's character arcs. Just phenomenal run. So good. If you have not read the IDW comics, please go read them. I highly recommend you start with More Than Meets the Eye, because that is the comic run that everyone, including myself, talks about and adores. So freaking good. Easy S tier. Oh, and straight after that, we are on to Transformers Prime. I think Transformers Prime, other than Earthspark, which we'll get to later, is my favorite Transformers cartoon. It is my favorite Transformers cartoon. It is so freaking good. I got into Transformers Prime after I had been recommended to watch it from friends when I had started getting into the Transformers fan base. This was another one that's very highly regarded, so I was recommended it. And once I started watching it, I learned that holy shit, this is an amazing series. Like, Transformers Prime is really good, and I will say there's definitely quite a bit from this series that has been poked and prodded at, and people are like, oh, there's plot holes here, blah, 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 blah. But for the time that we got Transformers Prime in, fucking phenomenal series. Phenomenal series. Oh my god. This cartoon is so good, from the characters and the comedy to the plots that go on. It's very compelling. In fact, not even for like the plot, it's just the fact that you are so connected to this cast of characters in this show. And I will say, compared to like other Transformers series, this show has a lot less characters than in previous Transformers shows that have had like very large cast of characters, like G1, the IDW comics, the Unicron trilogy, maybe even Beast Wars. Transformers Prime only has a few on each side, and I feel that really helps to like create that connection between you as the viewer and these characters, especially because the character development is done so well in this series. The one episode that I'm sure if you're in the Transformers fan base, you've heard almost anybody, any like Ratchet fan talk about is Harder, Faster, Stronger. That episode, phenomenal. The best Ratchet episode ever, other than in TFA, which is one of my personal favorites as well. Like, Ratchet keeps getting such good character development episodes that are just phenomenal. So phenomenal. I will say TFP for me does sometimes fall into, probably when I first watched this show, I was fully encapsulated in this show. This was an awesome show, and this was also the show that made me a Megatron simp. Oops. It's so funny. I actually used to find that Megatron design horrid because I was like, where's his bucket head? He's supposed to have his bucket head. Why is he purple now? Why is he purple? Isn't he supposed to have like red on him or be silver and gray? What the fuck? But now I'm like, oh my god, no, he's so hot. He's so pretty. He's so pretty. And I will say, it was absolutely the way that Megatron is characterized in TFP that really made me like fall for that character. Like, he's actually just a good villain. He is a good villain because he is so conniving and just, again, straight up a villain. He's just straight up a villain in that show. He's not really made out to try to be like a redeemable person unless you've watched the movie for Transformers Prime, which that's a whole other story. But like, TFP Megatron is so good, and so many of the characters like Bulkhead, RC, Ratchet, Smokescreen, Bumblebee, Ultra Magnus are just such compelling characters. Frick, Starscream in that series is really freaking good as well, even though I have personal opinions about him, but a lot of people really love Starscream in that series. And Steve Blum does a great performance. Steve Blum is a great Starscream. But Transformers Prime for me, ooh, it's either gonna be between S or A for me. Oh no, not again. Oh god. I think S tier. We're not going to think about it anymore. We're going in S tier. It's going in S tier because it really is a good series, and I highly recommend, if you want to get into Transformers, you watch Transformers Prime. Watch Transformers Prime. It's so good. Alright, so this series, Transformers Robots in Disguise 2015, is the sequel series to Transformers Prime. Now, despite it being a sequel series, this is actually a much different cartoon compared to Transformers Prime. It is much more lighthearted and much more comedic and a lot more episodic than following a larger plot in the end, unless we're talking about season 1, but even then it's kind of episodic. There's, again, very similar to like Prime Wars. This series has a lot of negative opinions and reviews about it, understandably, because it was meant to be a sequel for Transformers Prime, but it doesn't really feel like it because there's not that many references to Transformers Prime throughout this series. It's very minimal, if any, even from how far I've gotten into Robots in Disguise, which is only about the tail end of season 1. So I still have a lot to get through with this series, but it's not a bad series. Like, honestly, this is actually still a really strong Transformers series. I personally have really enjoyed Robots in Disguise, mainly because I kind of went into it knowing that, okay, this isn't going to be anything like TFP. I know that, but let's try and open my mind here and see how this series is for what it is, and we'll go from there. And I really enjoyed myself. I really love that it is just silly and lighthearted and fun. The characters are still fairly enjoyable. Grimlock is my favorite, personally. I am such a fan of Rid 2015. Grimlock. He is so precious. I love him. And I honestly love that Bumblebee is very like snarky and just kind of over shit. Like he is a hardened war soldier at this point. He's been through so much. He's already saved Cybertron before. He just wants to be acknowledged and live up to Optimus's reputation. It's so silly goofy. I really do love this series. I think this will go in A tier. I haven't finished this series yet, but it goes in A tier because I've really been having a good time with it. It really is just a very enjoyable series, so long as you go into the series not expecting it to be like a direct sequel to TFP, which, you know, understandably, that's why a lot of people have very negative opinions about this show, because it was meant to be that, but it wasn't. Oh well. I at least have been having a really fun time with it. That's another show that I honestly probably recommend just if you want a fun time. If you want a silly fun time with a silly goofy Transformers series. Absolutely that. Also, I adore Steeljaw. He is my boyfriend. All right, next continuity is Transformers Devastation. Now, I have just started playing Transformers Devastation because maybe last year got that for myself. I've played it a little bit on and off here. It's a fairly enjoyable game. I've maybe finished like 25% of the game. I want to say that. I want to kind of give it that. It's a fairly enjoyable game. If anything, it's mainly like the art and the gameplay that really sticks out with this continuity, not so much like any of the lore that's going on. It's just kind of like typical Transformers stuff, like Autobots fight Decepticons and they gotta win. Yeah. But it's definitely like the gameplay that really sticks out in Devastation. It feels like a full battle. Like you are truly these Autobots fighting these really powerful, strong Decepticons. The Megatron boss fight, fuck. I actually felt like I was fighting Megatron. It was so good because he's got his character AI is like pretty freaking powerful, and I'm playing on like easy mode. I'm basically playing on easy mode, and that motherfucker was still hard to take down. He was still like a challenge where you still have to like employ a little bit of strategy in order to beat him, and I really admire that it's challenging me a bit even on easy mode, just to really make it feel like you are fighting the bad guy. You are fighting the main villain here as this tiny little Autobot soldier. I think I was playing a Sideswipe on that level, and it really did feel like that. It was really good. And even when you fight Devastator as Optimus Prime, holy crud, the scale is done so well in that game. You really feel how big Devastator is in comparison to the city around you and to you as Optimus Prime yourself. Phenomenal. The game, like, I highly recommend this game in like A tier simply for its gameplay. Go play it for the gameplay. Don't worry about the story or any of that. It's Transformers. Again, it's very G1 style Transformers. That is what Devastation is. So if you like G1 style Transformers, get to Devastation. Also, if you like good gameplay, go play Devastation. It's a freaking good game. Go play it. Okay, so these two shows, Rescue Bots and Rescue Bots Academy, I'm going to group together in this ranking because I actually haven't seen these shows myself. However, I have heard many good things about Rescue Bots specifically. I'm not too sure about Rescue Bots Academy, but Rescue Bots specifically is apparently really fucking good. Just from things I've heard from like mutuals of mine online and everything that say, you need to watch this, you need to watch this, and bits and pieces that I have seen of the show through like Tumblr, TikTok, so on and so forth, that seem really interesting and funny. And for those who don't know, Rescue Bots is actually also part of the Align continuity, which is really silly goofy, and it really just goes to show how honestly dog shit the Align continuity is as far as keeping things in a sensible plot, I guess, because Rescue Bots, very much in the vein of Robots in Disguise, does not have a lot to do with TFP at all. Optimus appears in it, but he's got a design that a lot of people thought was very controversial. Thought was just not good. I kind of hold my reservations on some of that simply because I haven't seen the series. I do look forward to Rescue Bots though. And watching it just because I've heard the characters of Chase and Heatwave, so on and so forth, are really cool characters. I really look forward to watching this show actually, but I think for now these will have to go and see just because I feel like my concentration might be really iffy with these shows. I feel like it might kind of be along the lines of like Beast Wars and G1 where it's like if something doesn't fully grab my attention, I'm gonna kind of like veer off into the void as far as where my attention is. But again, we will see. Transformers Cyberverse. Okay, this I feel is a series very similar to Robots in Disguise, where it's just silly goofy. It's silly goofy and it's a good fun time. If you go and watch Cyberverse, you will be guaranteed to just have a fun, silly goofy time with silly goofy little guys. Cyberverse is also one of those series with a very large cast of characters, and while I wouldn't say that Cyberverse has particularly strong characters per se, mainly because they're very formulaic, I guess, but it's very formulaic, it's very episodic most of the time. However, in the later seasons, Cyberverse does go into like some really interesting plots, like the Quintessence arc, the arc where they're traveling back to Cybertron. Those are all really good arcs, and there are some really freaking strong episodes. The one episode that keeps coming to my mind every time I think of Cyberverse is the one where RC and Grimlock have to save the Ark, but in doing so, they go on all these adventures that kind of remind them of all these old adventures that they've been on together, as well as there's just some really interesting character relationships that work really well, like Grimlock and RC's friendship, as well as Skyfire and Skybite's friendship, frenemy, nemesis thing that's going on is really cute. Personally, a bit of a fan of that ship. But Cyberverse is just one of those like silly, goofy, fun series. It's not one of my particular favorites, although I am aware that people have very strong opinions about Cyberverse. I feel it's very much usually a series that people will either think is the best of the best, like this is the best Transformer series we've ever had in years, or this is awful, this is horrid, and it's dog shit. And this is like not what Transformers should be. I'm personally in the middle. I don't think it's the best. It's definitely not the worst, but it's definitely not the best series we've had, in my opinion. There are other series that grab my attention more that also have similar like tones to Cyberverse and or comedy. So I think like Cyberverse gets like a pretty high B, because it is definitely one of the better, stronger Transformers shows for me. But yeah, Cyberverse is a very strong B. It's cute, it's fun, it's silly, I like it. This is one of... This show is my underrated beloved. The show right here, BotBots. I adore Transformers BotBots. BotBots is so freaking cute. It is such an underrated Transformers series, and a lot of people either forget that it exists or don't know that it exists, but BotBots was a Netflix series that came out I think it was around the same time that the IDW comics were ending, or like a year after Transformers Siege came out. So like this was one of the shows that was kind of in an in-between time, but it was actually really good. It's one of those series that seems like it's just a silly, goofy series made for kids, and it is. It very much is. That is very much what this show is. But it really surprised me with how good the comedy actually is, and the characters especially. Like, wow, these characters are actually all really cool characters. I actually really freaking liked all of the characters in this, despite that a lot of the characters just really have it out for Bergatron. Oh my god. Poor dude is just treated like dog shit. But like all these characters are actually really cool and really fun. This is definitely very similar to Cyberverse, where it's just a silly, goofy, fun series, and actually probably more like Rid. It's probably more like Rid in that it's a very silly, goofy, fun series that you can just watch to have a good time. And personally, it's one of my underrated, beloved Transformers series, which is why it's going in like a very strong A tier. Very strong A. BotBots is really good, and I highly recommend, again, if you just want a silly, goofy, fun Transformers series that isn't with any of the main bots, but instead some like original bots, highly recommend that you go watch BotBots. It's a fun time. It is such a fun time. Oh man, I'm glad we're getting to the end of this list, because my voice is going. My voice is going. I've been talking too long. Alright, so next one on this list is probably another more underground Transformers series, and I believe this is the Transformers Go manga. Very similar to BotBots and Rid 2015. This is a silly, goofy, fun series. This is a silly, goofy series that is just for fun and for the heck of it. Go read it if you want some silly, goofy manga-style antics, because Transformers Go is a manga. Transformers Go is a manga, and it very much has that Japanese comedic style that is actually really cute and very endearing for Transformers, especially. It's just very cute, silly interactions with our beloved franchisee characters, Optimus, Bumblebee, Ratchet. Some of the Beast Wars boys are there actually in that comic, and the Decepticons and all of that. It is actually a really fun comic series. There's actually a Tumblr account which has been working on translating these comics into English. I highly recommend. I will put the Tumblr Tumblr blog here in the video somewhere. I highly recommend you go check that blog out if you want to go and have a read of these comics, as I believe all the current comics of this manga are in Japanese, the current printed ones. So have a follow of this blog if you would like to read the English translations. It is very well done, and it is a super cute manga, and I highly recommend it if you like silly, goofy Transformers series. That actually, does that go in S tier simply for the comedy? Yeah, you know what? That goes, I think Transformers Go deserves to be in S tier because I feel the comedy is so good in it that I have spent a good while just laughing my ass off and having a good time with that comic. So I think that's going in S tier. Highly recommend. Oh, this one's also an immediate S tier. The Bumblebee movie? Oh my god! The Bumblebee movie was the first movie that we got after Michael Bay no longer directed the Transformers movies. Bumblebee was the start of what people call the Nightverse and or the new franchise, the new like reboot for the live action Transformers films. And what a phenomenal start. Phenomenal start. Bumblebee has so much heart and character and just love put into that film that you can really tell that these are people who loved and cared about Transformers making this film. You can really feel that, especially because, and everyone talks about this in the fan base as well, is that the first 5 minutes of that movie are the best bits of that movie. Oh my god. Oh my god. The very small bit that we get on Cybertron where we see their Cybertronian modes and some of their alts, phenomenal. The colors are popping, which I was really happy to see as a fan of Transformers who really loves when Transformers have vivid colors, because that is the point. Transformers has always been very colorful and vivid. They should have color, unlike Bayverse. And Bumblebee really blew that out of the park. Even with Charlie, our human character, she was phenomenal in this film. And I'm not usually someone who likes the human characters in Transformers because, hey, I'm watching this for Transformers, not for humans, sort of thing. But Charlie was a wonderfully compelling character, and the relationship that her and Bumblebee had and the friendship they had in that film was so compelling. And I'm pretty sure that film made me cry when I first went to see it in theaters when it first came out. I'm pretty sure I just about cried, if not shed tears. So Bumblebee is an easy S tier. That is another piece of Transformers media that I highly recommend you watch if you want to get into Transformers or if you want to consume more Transformers content. Very good starting point and a really, really, really well done movie. Okay, so we had IDW 1 on this list already, but this one is also IDW Comics, but this is Phase 2, which was the 2019 run, I believe, or maybe 2018. I know that this specific run 2, specifically came after IDW 1. I'm not quite sure on that timeline again, but these were the comics after the IDW 1 run because IDW had the Transformers license for so long, over 10 years. I think it was like 15 years by the time the license ran up, which is like a phenomenally long run, especially with how good the IDW comics were most of the time. Now, I will say, despite that the IDW comics are very, the first run especially, that it was very well garnered and everything, the IDW 2 comics didn't hold up as well. It's not an awful comic series by any means, but I do definitely feel that the IDW 2 comics lack in a lot of ways that the IDW 1 comics really excelled in. IDW 2, especially from the comics that I did read, were really slow. The mainline comics were quite slow, and it took a long time to get anywhere. And the places that characters were going, because it's so slow, there's not much that's been done with it yet. I would say actually the comics that excelled in the IDW 2 run were usually the I believe it's like Galaxy World comics, or it was basically IDW 2's version of like what Spotlight comics were to IDW 1's run. The Galaxy comics were usually really good. The specific ones I remember are the ones with I think it's either the Insecticons or the Constructicons. That was really interesting and really went into like those more underrated characters a little more in a very interesting like plot way. And then is the comics with RC and Greenlight and their child, basically. I forget what their child's name is. I think it's Moonracer or something like that. Those comics were phenomenal. I really, really enjoyed those comics because those were fun. They had interesting plots, and the characters and the way that they are written and the relationships they have with each other, this familial bond is really strong and very compelling. So IDW 2 definitely has some like really good bits and pieces in it. Cliff Jumpers comic was really good as well, but the main run really, really lacks in a lot of places, sadly, as well as characters. So I think for that'll be like a high B. That'll be like a high B, maybe even a low A, simply because this definitely is some of the better Transformers media that we have gotten in the past. Maybe I will move it up to A. No, because I don't think about IDW 2 enough for it to be an A. I think that deserves like a high B. Yeah, IDW 2, a high B. A high B. Alright, next up, we've got Netflix's Transformers War for Cybertron. I would actually say this series was fairly highly anticipated in the fan base, at least because I was in the fan base when these like teasers and stuff were first dropped for War for Cybertron. It seemed like it was going to be really, really cool, especially because from some of the teasers I think that we had got, it seemed like this series was going to go into some themes that were very similar to what the IDW comics had done in the past, the IDW1 comics, specifically with the themes of like classism and all that, which are personally really compelling and interesting to me as a Transformers fan and someone who really loves seeing those themes gone into in media. But sadly, this series, I don't know if I can say the word BOMBED on YouTube, but it was not great. It was not great, sadly. Siege, I feel, was very hopeful when it first came out. Seemed like hopeful. It was very much a darker Transformers series, especially because this was marketed as the mature Transformers series that was dark and gritty, which, oh boy, it sure did feel dark and gritty, and along with that dark and grittiness, boring. Siege, I feel, was a fairly decent starting point simply because it relied a lot more heavily on the themes of classism, where Megatron was like this activist more so than like a villain. But it quickly went downhill, especially once Earthrise came out, where things just fell apart and it was just bland and boring and was focused too heavily on being dark and gritty, as well as, oh boy, the dubbing choices that were made for this series, I've got opinions about. Optimus's voice actor, I really don't like holding things against voice actors because it might more so be a directorial decision rather than the voice actor's faults. So what I will say is that whatever directing choice was made for Optimus's voice, or actually a majority of the characters, they speak so slow and methodical, like they're constantly thinking of new formulaic plans, and everyone talks like that 24/7. And especially on my rewatch, I recognized it even more because it was no longer a series that was new to me. I had seen it already. Everyone talks so slow in that freaking series. It's annoying. It is annoying, including just weird character voices for characters that should have different voices. I think the best examples was Tigatron and Dinobot's voice actors, and while they both did really good jobs, with the material they were given, their voice actors should have been swapped. Tigatron had Dinobot's voice and Dinobot had Tigatron's voice. It was very weird. I would say out of the trilogy, Kingdom was probably the best simply because it really embraced that this series was going downhill, so we might as well just be silly goofy and whack as far as like what the plot is anymore, and we're bringing in the Beast Wars bots, so things are gonna get crazy anyways, which it did. It really did. The plot went head over heels, really. So by the time Kingdom came around, it was actually quite a fun series because it kind of just let go of this dark grittiness, and even though it definitely still had dark grittiness to it, it just kind of accepted that the plot is whatever the fuck it is. And we're just gonna go all in. We're just gonna go all in and let it. Now Omega Supreme's here, I guess. But this series overall is like, I would go back and watch Kingdom, definitely, because that was actually quite fun. I just loved seeing the Beast Wars bots there and everything. It was silly, goofy. But for what it was trying to be, it was bad. It was bad. Not good. It did not live up to expectations. So I think that's a series that, like, easily goes in, like... I think for others, this would probably be, like, easy D-level series. But for me, this is, like, C, simply because Kingdom really saves it from being that D. And even, like, parts of Siege probably saves it from being in D C for me simply because it goes into those themes that I like a little bit, but it was a very disappointing series. It's a very low C. Oh, after our horrible disappointment with Siege and Earthrise and Kingdom, we've got the IDW Shattered Glass comics. Oh my god! Okay, I already know where this is going as well. The IDW Shattered Glass comics, as IDW has a wonderful track record with the had a wonderful track record with the Transformers series. The Shattered Glass comics were phenomenal. Oh my gosh. Now, I adore the Shattered Glass universe. I really love the Transformers Shattered Glass universe because I'm such a fan personally of AUs that swap characters around where the good guys are now the bad guys and the bad guys are now the good guys. And I know for a lot of people it's just like, oh, you're doing it again. But personally, I'm never tired of it. I love stuff like that. I am so miffed that we never got our Shattered Glass episode in TFA. I'm so sad that got scrapped because that would have been so cool. But I am glad that we do at least have the IDW Shattered Glass comics, the one and only piece of canonical media that we have for the Shattered Glass AU. Other than, I think, maybe some stuff from, it's either Dreamwave or the IDW1 comics where Cliffjumper and Deathsaurus went to the Shattered Glass universe for a short time, but it wasn't like it was a whole comic dedicated to Shattered Glass, which is why I say that Shattered Glass is the first Transformers continuity that we've ever had something fully dedicated to Shattered Glass. Like, this story was not like normal verse characters being transported into Shattered Glass like it was with the Cliffjumper comics. This is in the Shattered Glass universe. This is about the Shattered Glass Autobots and Decepticons. This is about their war and their fight. And the characterizations in this series were phenomenal. Oh my gosh. The writing is really poetic and a lot of the time actually feels very much, without spoiling too much, because I really highly recommend you go read this comic for yourself because it's only 5 issues. It's a very short run. The author, Danny Lore, did a wonderful job and has this style of like Greek tragedy with the writing between some of these relationships that these characters have. Feels very poetic. Greek tragedy, like I said. And the characterizations of these characters that are used, like Soundwave especially, are so compelling and really makes you feel for these characters. Again, without spoiling too much because y'all should really just go read these comics. And the art, as always, IDW rocks it with the art. I believe Guido Guidi did a majority of the art, if not like all of the art for the Shattered Glass run. I do definitely know he did, I think, the first 2 comics. I'm not sure about the next 3, but he definitely did do the first 2. And the art is just gorgeous. It's so saturated and colorful, exactly how Shattered Glass should be, and really how Transformers should be. Bright, colorful, and the Autobots in this universe are just straight up, they're crazy. They're crazy, they're psychopaths, and I love it. I absolutely love it. I love seeing the Decepticons as the good guys. The Shattered Glass comics, easy S tier. I already knew I was gonna put it in S. Like I said, I knew where this was going, but S tier. Easy S tier. Highly recommend. Oh, and now we follow it up with another. I think this one might also go in S tier. Will also go in S tier. But this is Transformers Earthspark. This is the newest cartoon that we have had for Transformers, and it has been a fucking hit, personally, for me. I have adored this cartoon. It has been doing everything right. I have definitely heard people with varying opinions that aren't just being like transphobic, queerphobic fucking assholes or like ableist or like racist people because, oh boy, just because we know the attention that this show has garnered due to Fox News and Elon Musk getting their fucking grubby little mittens all over this fucking show. I definitely, other than those, have heard some varying opinions about how this show handles its queer representation and how it handles just plots and characters. But in my opinion, for what this show is supposed to be about, the themes that are supposed to be there, which is for family, and it's also meant to be a family show and or kid friendly, I believe it's doing everything right. And I get that there's a lot of Transformers fans, including myself, who would like to see more mature Transformers series. That doesn't mean that Earthspark isn't fulfilling that. Earthspark has some really interesting themes going on, and it is addressing that kind of classism that Transformers has in other series like the IDW comics and in the Align continuity. It is going into that, and the fact that we now have a Megatron like the IDW comics that has become an Autobot that is kind of reformed and is trying to better himself and his people. But at the same time, we're also dealing with Ghost and Optimus realizing that this government system is bullshit, basically. I really adore that this series is going into that. And, you know, despite that it's still very much a family-friendly series, it absolutely is. It is going into those themes because those are especially applicable to our real life today. And while there's a lot of people who will get fucking uppity about that, we need more shows like that. We really do need more shows like that. And I'm so glad that Earthspark is taking that bound and leap to do that, because this show has so many people working on it that truly love and adore Transformers, and some very well-known people who have also worked on the IDW comics, like Nick Roche, who wrote and drew for the IDW comics, is a character designer on that show. He helped design Tarantulas, and it's really cool that this much effort is being put into this show, not just for the themes that are present in it, but also for the characters and the new characters that have been popping up, the ways that they are characterized. The fact that I love all of the new Terrans and all of the human characters. I love every single one of them, and every single one of them are so compelling, and I worry for their safety every episode. I'm like, oh god. Every time something bad happens, I'm like, please no. I haven't seen the latest episodes where I know Starscream gets a lot of attention, and I'm really looking forward to watching those myself. So please also be aware not to leave spoilers for those episodes in the comments, just for my sake, please. This show has so much promise, and it is already really, really fulfilling on those promises with just the episodes that we have had so far. So I think by the time Transformers Earthspark finishes, this is going to be an easy S-tier show. Phenomenal show, if not the best cartoon for Transformers that we have ever had. And last but not least is Transformers Rise of the Beast, our latest live-action Transformers film. Now, what I'm about to say might be controversial, in the fan base especially, but I have thoughts and feelings about this show that I do plan on making a full video about later. Oh, I've got things in my brain. So I won't say everything here, but I will say I had high hopes for this movie, especially after the second trailer. But sadly, the movie, when I went to see it, did not live up to those expectations and the hype. Even though I've heard a lot of people have really loved this movie, and absolutely, fuck yeah, if you like this movie, more fucking power to you. I have thoughts and feelings. I was very disappointed, honestly. Not saying that it was something as bad as Bayverse. It wasn't. There were actually quite a few strengths in this movie compared to a normal Bayverse film. However, Michael Bay does still help produce these Transformers films, which gets on my nerves personally. Which, again, in the later YouTube video that I have planned, I do plan on going into that a little bit more. I know for a lot of people, they say they would watch this again as like a popcorn movie, but I wouldn't even watch this as a popcorn movie, is where my thoughts and feelings are at with this movie. I think for me, this is more like a high C. Rise of the Beast was like a high C because you had the Beast Wars bots there. Mirage was a wonderful character. The humans were definitely more compelling in this movie than they were in any of the other Bay films, really. But still not great. There was a lot of lost potential. Again, all of this I will go into more depth in a later video. But for now, that's going to be like a high C. A high C, definitely above Bayverse. Alright though, I'm actually surprised I didn't have anything in D tier. I'm actually really surprised. I really thought maybe Beast Machines or maybe even Bayverse would be down there for me, but I really try not to judge series that I haven't seen too much of. So yeah, definitely a lot in the C and B tiers. If you would like to check out more Transformers content for this franchise or anything, I definitely recommend anything in my A tier or my S tier. Anything in those are phenomenal series. Really freaking good series. Very good Transformers series that are either just silly, goofy, and you'll have a good laugh, or you're definitely going to fucking cry. You're definitely gonna cry, or you're gonna feel compelled with the characters and the storytelling and the themes that are going on here. Highly recommend all of those in A and S tier. And again, BC tier, you can still go watch the series. Absolutely. Have a fun time, because again, this is a silly, goofy franchise about transforming robots who transform into cars and other things. I hope y'all enjoyed this silly little fun video. I definitely always have fun with a bit of a tier list. I love giving me opinions because I'm a special boy. No, but I do just love info dumping, I guess, more so about my favorite things, my favorite series, and I do plan maybe on making a few more tier list videos for certain series and other hyperfixations of mine that I would love to do in the future, so there might be more of this, and of course, as more Transformers series come out, I will definitely probably be tier listing the newer ones as well, but that will absolutely take time. Feel free to pop your thoughts and feelings on any of these Transformers shows that we went over here. Shows, comics, etc. There's a lot more than shows on this list. Can you tell I'm unscripted right now? But go ahead, leave your thoughts and feelings in the comments, leave a like on this video, and subscribe if you feel like it. But I hope y'all have had good days, and if not, rest, relax, and take a step back. Bye!